Hi, hello, how are you? Sit down, relax, stretch out, stay a while. The celebration is just beginning. It's time for Flashback with Wes Britton, where we dive into entertainment history. Yeah, me and my co-host, Karina Kansas, are going to talk to stars. Stars from the past, present, and future. Stars from TV, movies, music, radio. We're going to be talking to authors and experts who are going to take us down memory lane and share memories and stories and nuggets about entertainment and all of the different things that have affected us so deeply over all our lives. So it's a party. So come on in. You're welcome. We're expecting you. Come on in. The water's fine here at Flashback with Wes Britton.
Hello, everyone. This is Wes Britton. And when I say two guests, well, the guitar player on Reason to Believe was our good friend John York, who appeared on one of our March shows talking about his days with the Byrds, the Mamas and the Papas, and Johnny Rivers. But the singer is a friend of ours just joining us, Barry McGuire. Yes, indeed. Eva Destruction Barry McGuire. And he has so many stories to talk about that it's going to take a while. If you go visit his official website, barrymcguire.com, he's got a lengthy, detailed, and just astonishing biography that I hope you folks will check out. And we'll talk a bit more about his website and some of the music that you can download from the site. But let's get started. Let's bring Barry on and find out a bit more about all the people that he knew, places he was at. It's a fun story. So, hello, Barry.
I love when people introduce you as that. And here he is, Barry, Eve of Destruction McGuire.
Well, it is something to be known for one particular song, but of course your career was a lot going before that song and a lot after it.
Well, yeah, before that I started with the new Christey Minstrels. Randy Sparks gave me my first opportunity to sing on stage, and he's a brilliant songwriter and very creative, and he had this idea to put together a mega group. And so he invited me to be a part of it, the new Christey Minstrels. And Randy and I actually got started on it flying back to New York. And then when I got there, I sang it, and then he helped me finish the words because he's such a great wordsmith. And we wrote Green Green together, and that was our biggest Christey Minstrel hit. Well, Today was a big one, too, for us. But Green Green was, I think it made the top 10, something like that, and top 20, I don't remember. But then after the Christeys, Dylan was hit town right about then, and I started hearing his music. I thought, man, I want to sing some of his stuff. So I left the Christeys, came to California.
Whoa. Let me back up for a second here before we get too far into the story. Okay. I wanted you to talk about, for one thing, how was it that Peggy Lee helped you get your career going?
Oh, well, I was a pipe fitter. I worked as a commercial fisherman, and I got into pipe fitting for 5 years, got my journeyman's card, and went into a little club in Hermosa Beach, someplace down there, and heard a guy playing the guitar and singing folk songs, and I just so resonated in me as I was addicted into the first 3 songs. And I bought a guitar the following week, learned how to play it, and then I was hanging out in a little club in Santa Monica, Shea J's. It's right on Ocean Boulevard there, a little restaurant bar, and one afternoon, I'm sitting there having a beer, and a guy comes over and says, "Excuse me," he says, "Miss Lee would like to meet you," because I'd been singing some songs, and then I was over having a beer, and I said, "Oh, okay, sure. So can I bring my beer?" "Sure." So I went over and sat down, and this is Barry McGuire. What should I introduce myself? This is Miss Lee, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, my brain is so short on names, I had to write your name down, Wes. I can't remember names. I meet too many people. And
wish my students would do the same.
So I don't even try. And they all started calling her Peg. Well, Peg Dodd and this and that. And then she said, "Yeah, really, you got a great voice, and I think I can get you a job up at your little club in Beverly Hills and Marshall Edison's place." And I said, "Oh, that'd be great, Peg. Yeah, I'd love it." She says, "Where can I get in touch with you?" I said, "Well, you can call me here because, I lived in a motel right next door." And I said, "I get all my messages here." She said, "Okay, I'll call you next week." And, okay, great. So they got up and left. And then I went over back to the bar with my beer, and everybody came over and says, "What did Peggy Lee have to say?" I said, "Peggy Lee? Was she?" Because she'd been on the beach all day, and her hair was all messed up, and she had on a beach robe. And I know it's Peggy Lee, What did I know? I said, well, she said she's going to give me a job uptown. And sure enough, a week later, a guy called me and said, well, you know, Fed called. He said, I don't need anybody. I've got a full boat here. But she said, I got to hear you, so get your butt up here. And so I drove up to Beverly Hills and went into his little club there. And I think I sang Mariah. Way out west they have a name for wind and rain and fire. Oh, I love that song. Still love it. And just really sang from my toes. And when I finished, he says, well, she's right. He said, you got a job. I don't need anybody, but I'm hiring you. So that's how I started working uptown. And within 3 or 4 months, Randy heard me singing and invited me to join the Christey Minstrels. It was, you know, I never set out to be a professional singer. I just love singing. I love making people happy. I love making people laugh. When I was a little kid, my school teacher used to get mad at me because I'd made all, you know, I was goofy. And she said, you know, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. And I said, well, I don't care why they're laughing, you know. And I just love to laugh, and I love it when people laugh. So, and music really opened that door for me where I could walk out on stage and take people on a journey, you know, a wonderful, rich journey.
Well, one question you can probably help me with, I've been wondering for years. The new Christey Minstrels was who were the old Christey Minstrels? Was there an original group?
That's a good question. The old Christey Minstrels are put together by a guy named John P. Christey, call him Pop Christey, and what was the guy way down upon? What was that guy's name? Wrote all those songs.
Oh, Stephen Foster.
Yeah, Stephen Foster was writing all these songs, and he didn't. You know, they didn't have radios in those days. And so he needed somebody to sing his songs, and so he got Christey to put this group together. And somehow he got in touch with each other. So Christey started singing all the old Stephen Foster songs, and he put together this group of big, you know, they did, you know, blackface with white gloves, playing banjos, and sitting in a half circle, have about 15 guys on stage playing banjos, and they would do Swanee River and stuff like that. And and they were called the Christey Minstrels. So when Christey's Minstrels, yeah. So when Randy got he was looking for a name for the group, and he thought, well, because it was similar, Randy had all these songs he was writing, and he couldn't get anybody to record them. He thought, well, I'll do what Stephen Foster did. I'll put together a big group, and we'll sing my songs. And so that's what happened, and man, it really worked.
Yeah, that became a band, well, a group, I guess you'd say, with a lot of illustrious alumni. You had some Love and Spoonful folks in there, and some other association,
Yeah, Larry Ramos came out of there, and what's his name? First edition, Kenny Rogers.
Oh, Kenny Rogers, yeah.
Yeah, he came out of there. Karen Black came out of there. I mean, just a whole bunch of people came through the Minstrels. Yeah. So that's how I got, you know, and did like 300 shows a year for 3 years, and it kind of just helped. It was like my apprenticeship. I served my apprenticeship with the Minstrels. Learn how to go out on stage whether you felt like it or not, and do a show whether you felt like it or not, you know. And that's it. You guys said, how do you become a professional? I said, well, you just you do it and you do it and you do it until you think I'm sick of this. I never want to do this again. And then you wake up tomorrow and you do it again and again and again and again, and you get sick and say, that's it. I'm throwing this guitar away. I never want to see it again. I never want to walk out on another stage again. And the next day you walk out on another stage and do another show. And about 5 years of that, and one day you wake up and say, gee, I know how to do this. And you realize you're a pro.
And somewhere in there you decided that the new Christey Minstrels was kind of yesterday's news, and you wanted to do something new, right?
Well, their songs, yeah, they were singing Randy, and Randy's still writing great tunes. In fact, I'm doing 2 shows with the Christeys in next month. Excellent. You know, the end of May, down in the L.A. area, and it's on my blog page if you want to go to my either BarryMcGuire.com or trippinto60s.com and just go on the schedule page. I mean, and that's where I'm going to be, but. Yeah, I still work with Randy, but I wanted, you know, Dylan, like I said, Dylan hit the market, and his songs just absolutely spoke to me. You know, they're like my own words coming out of his mouth and my own thoughts and feelings. And actually there were millions of us that felt that way when we heard his music.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to sing some Dylan tunes, so I left the Christeys, went out to California, and Roger McGuinn was just putting a group together. He gave me a ride across town one afternoon. And he said, we just recorded an album, and it's coming out next week, and get a single on it, you know. And he said, how's it go? So he's driving, I'm sitting in the passenger seat, and we're going down La Cienega Boulevard, and he starts singing away a cappella. And it was a Dylan tune. I said, you bum, you beat me. I wanted to do that tune, and he beat me to it. And about a week later, it was on the radio, and 3-4 weeks later, it was opening night at Ciro's, and there they were on stage singing. And
that was Mr. Tambourine Man, right?
Tambourine Man, yeah, man. And I love that stuff. That's in my Trip in the 60s show. We do it all the time. And when I'm out there dancing, this guy says, hey, McGuire, and danced over in that direction. He says, what you doing? I said, I'm dancing. He says, well, are you singing? I said, oh, the birds are singing. I'm dancing. He says, sit down. So I sat down. He says, would you like to be recording? And I said, yeah, I'd love to be. So he introduced me to this young 19-year-old kid from Beverly Hills, Phil Sloan, P.F. Sloan, had a notebook full of new songs. And 3 weeks later, I was in the studio and recorded Eve of Destruction in one take.
Well, tell the folks who the guy was you sat down with, because he was a noteworthy character. In the 60s.
Yeah, Lou Adler.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lou was a record producer, and he was there with Steve Barry and Phil Sloan, and I think I can never remember his name. Some guy, Andy, the Rolling Stones manager, Andy.
Andrew Lloyd Oldham.
Andy Oldham, yeah, Andy was there that night, yeah, and they were all sitting at the table, and so Lou gave me his phone number. He says, give me a call next week. I said, okay, and I got up and started dancing, and the show was over, and I danced out the door with about 20 people, and about a week later, my phone rang. He says, you didn't call me. I said, I lost your phone number.
Oh, my, what are the stories?
He says, I figured that had happened. He says, where are you right now? I says, I'm out in the valley. He says, give me the address. What are you doing? I said, nothing. He says, I'll send a car for you. So he sent his limo over, picked me up, brought me back to Beverly Hills to his office, and that's when I met Phil and Steve Barry, and Phil sang the songs. And he ripped these these pages of handwritten songs and gave them to me. And I had Eve of Destruction in my back pocket for the next couple of weeks, and I'd take it out and sing it once in a while and trying to get used to the tune. I really liked it because of what it had to say. And so we went in to record it, and we did 2 songs. We had a 3-hour session. We'd finished 2 songs. Lou said that the third song, he said, this sounds like the first song. Let's do something else. So I yanked these words out of my back pocket and smoothed all the wrinkles out of it and hung it on a music stand. So let's do this Eve of Destruction tune. I said, oh, okay, well, and Lou wasn't that hot about this song. He said, well, maybe we'll put on a B-side or something, And so they went through, it's only a 4-chord song, so the band went through it twice. And yeah, we only had 20 minutes left in the session. I mean, we'd already finished 2 songs and in a 3-hour session. And so they said, okay, let's go for it. And they pushed the red button, and we recorded it. And I blew the last note. I flatted it, so they punched that in. Terrible punch. And I wanted to redo the whole vocal track because there's a place in where I go, you can't twist the truth. And the reason I'm going, is because I lost my place in the wrinkly paper where the words were. So it was a terrible take. I wanted to redo it, and Lou said, we'll come in next week. We're out of time. And well, by next Monday morning, the song was on KFWB. LA was a big rock station at the time. And they broke the tune. 6 o'clock Monday morning, I got a phone call, turn on KFWB. And I went into the living room, turned it around, and on the floor is Timmy Harden with his girlfriend of the night. He had called me the night before, and he said, hey, McGuire, he said, can I use can I come and go by your place, or can I use your bedroom or something? And I only had one bedroom. I said, well, you can sleep on the floor. So I gave him a blanket and a pillow and said, go for it, and I went to bed. And so the next morning, they were sound asleep, stepped over their body, turned on the radio, and there was Eve on the radio. And Timmy woke up. He was the first guy sitting there. He's rubbing his eyes. He's half asleep. He goes, hey, that's you on the radio. I said, yeah, can you believe it? And there's, you can't twist the truth. And there's my mistake forever, indelibly. The whole world is heard now.
And I understand there was a group of teenagers who heard a demo of it who got the ball rolling?
The way it broke was, we were going to go back in the studio the following week. We recorded on a Thursday. Well, and Lou used to, they didn't have tapes in those days. They had little acetates.
Right.
So he took some acetates back to his office. Well, Friday, this guy came by his office. His name is Ernie Farrell. He was an amateur, he's a professional photographer, actually, and a record promoter. He would take records around to radio stations and try to get people to play them. And so he was talking to Lou about what he was doing, and Lou went out of the office, and Ernie just picked up, without Lou even knowing it, picked up a couple of the little acetates off of his desk, said, I'll take these home and see what they sound like. And that afternoon, he had a photo session at the guy who was the program director for KFWB. He had a photo session for his daughter. It was his daughter's birthday party. So he's up taking pictures, ran out of flash bulbs, and he goes out to the car to get some more, and he sees these acetates there. And so he said, well, I wonder if the kids will think of these. So he takes them into the birthday party, and they play one, they play another one, then they put on Eve of Destruction, and it stopped the party. Everybody went, whoa, what is that? And they all came over, play it again. So they played it again, and the girl grabbed it and ran into her dad's office. Dad, you got to listen to this. And so her dad listened to it, and then he called Lou right from there and says, if you mix this and master it, he says, and press it, he said, I'll go on it Monday morning as a pick to hit. Well, that was like, Saturday, I think. And so that Sunday they called everybody in, and they did the little background vocals of the girls going, ah, ooh, ah,
Mm-hmm.
And they mixed it and pressed it and got a copy over to KFWB, first thing Monday morning. Must have been at 5 o'clock in the morning. And there it was. At 6, it was on the radio.
One thing that just struck me I couldn't believe was that while that song was a huge hit and put you on the map, it also just about destroyed your career, didn't it?
Well, that's what I heard, But, who knows what happened. Sloan told me that about 10 years later that they used to have a report that went out to all the disc jockeys. And because Eve, they banned it from all the stations, the major network stations, but it hit number one anyway. And none of the disc jockeys made a dime on payola. I mean, back then, payola was a big thing. They would pay disc jockeys to play songs. Or they would give them presents, and they would, and the disc jockeys didn't make a dime off of Eve, and they didn't like that. And so they said, no matter what McGuire, this report came out, says, no matter what McGuire comes out with next, don't play it. And they didn't. They said it's a loose cannon in the music industry. We can't have this, We have to get control of our music here. Mm-hmm. So after that, I did Cloudy Summer Afternoon, which was a hit song in Australia. It was a number one tune in Norway, Made it in other countries, but never got any play in the United States. So that's cool, though, because if I had of, like California Dreamin' was supposed to be one of my next singles, too.
That was my next question. Why don't you tell the folks as to how that started out really as your song with the mamas and pamas in the background, but it didn't work out that way, did it?
Well, what happened is, I was working on my album, and I got a call from Cass, and she had just come out from New York.
That would be Cass Elliot, folks.
Cass Elliot, yeah, and with John and Michelle Phillips and Denny Doherty. And she said, hey, I'm out here watching my friends, McGuire. You got to hear this music we're singing. It's really cool. So I jumped on my motorcycle and had a big brown paper bag full of herbal medicine under my armpit there. And up the hill I went and walked in, and they're all sitting on the floor. They don't have a stick of furniture. I mean, no, but, we all sat on the floor in those days. It was just a hippie thing that we did. I mean, even if there was furniture, we didn't sit on it, So we were sitting on the floor, and I walked in. They already had a newspaper all spread out on the floor, and I dumped the herbs in the newspaper, and they're all rolling joints, and smoked a joint and kind of relaxed a little bit. And then John reached over and picked up his guitar, and the four of them started singing, and I thought I had died and gone to musical heaven, man. Never heard anything like them all. I mean, the Byrds were, out of the ballpark. But when I heard the Mamas and Papas, it was just a whole nother level. And so I called Lou right there, right from Cass's house. I said, listen, you got to hear these guys. He said, well, bring them to the studio tomorrow. So the next day they showed up. And Denny told me that Cass wasn't even supposed to be in the group. He said that John, he wanted another girl who looked like Michelle. He didn't want Cass. He wanted, she wasn't.
Something more photogenic.
She wasn't glamorous enough, for what he had in mind. But Denny told John, he says, McGuire, when Cass was singing, when McGuire, he probably thinks she's part of the group, John, and so you better bring her along. So John said, well, okay. And Cass really didn't. She wasn't that hot about being in a group anyway. She wanted to be a solo artist. But they went down and sang, and Lou's, jaw hit his chest, and he goes, my goodness, sign here.
Yeah.
So in order for them to make some money, because they were all broke, he said, why don't we let them do the background vocals on this album you're doing? And I said, okay. And so then we recorded California Dreamin', one of John's tunes, and they did the background vocals on that. It was Studio 3 Western Recorders there in L.A. And we heard and they weren't doing the counterpoint at first. They started doing the counterpoint working on my background vocals, you know. I mean, you know, like, all the leaves are brown, all the leaves are brown, and the sky is gray, and the sky is gray. Well, they came up with those secondary lines doing background vocals for my album. And it just blew them away. They said, that's the sound we need. That's it, man. That's the feeling we want. And so John said, he said, I'd like to release this as our first single. So Lou said, well, ask him. So John took me out into the hallway and he said, you know, we'd really like to do California Dreamin' as our first single, Barry. And I said, sure, man, you wrote the tune, record it. You know, I said, then you can pay for the grass. Because I was supplying everybody, you know. I mean, I had a number one record going. I had money coming in. So they did. They took, and I didn't know this for 20 years went by. And one day my son was listening to his CD player, and one of the channels, the right channel, was broken. The left track was playing. And he says, Dad, come and listen to this. And so I went in, what? He says, that sounds like your voice. And if you listen to the left channel on California Dreamin' on a CD, you'll hear my voice going, all the leaves, and then it's gone. It didn't quite scrub my voice. And so I called Denny. I said, you bum, man. I said, you used my track, and you never paid me any royalties. You know, all those karaoke singers out there singing to my track.
Ooh.
You know, and you're getting paid for it, you know. So my question is, my trivia question is what is the first karaoke hit song ever recorded?
I guess you're about to tell me California
Dreamin'. They sang karaoke, those bums, to my track. That's right. That I paid for. But it was huge for them, and they took off, and I didn't see them for the next 3 years, you know. Yeah, but that's just the craziness of the whooping.
Along the way, they put out Creek Alley. What did you think of hearing yourself evoked in?
I was driving down Hollywood Boulevard one afternoon. I had a little Seata Roadster, a little Italian Roadster, weighed 1,800 pounds, and I had a 300 horsepower Corvette engine and transmission in it. Man, sucker was like a rocket on wheels. And I could never get out of third gear, never get into fourth. And in third gear, I'm chugging down the street. And Roger McGuire was going the other direction. He had a big black Cadillac 4-door hardtop, you know. And he saw me, and I pulled over the curb. He did a big U-turn and pulled right behind me. We got out of the car, and we're sitting on his left front fender. He's got the windows open. He had the first stereo in an automobile, I think, ever put into an automobile. And he had the radio blasting away in his car, and we're sitting on the fender. Just beautiful sunny afternoon, and cars are going by, and we're talking about can't believe in what's happened to us, and you know where we're going, what we're doing, and right at that time on the radio comes Creaky Alley.
You guys were sitting together when you first heard that?
Pardon?
You guys were sitting together when you first heard that?
Yeah, I was. I'd never heard it before. Yeah,
that's classic.
And says. And we're going to just get in Ella, you know where that's at. And so Roger leans over. He says, well, where is that at? And I said, well, I don't know, man. I thought you knew. He says, no, man, I don't know. And so then he says, hey, don't tell anybody we don't know because they all think we know where it's at. So over the next 5 years, I went around pretending like I knew where it was at, and I didn't have a clue, man. You know. But it was magic. It was a magic moment. I mean, I couldn't believe it. There was all of our friends, Zalyanowski, you know, and John Sebastian, you know, just Cassie and you know the song was originally Joan and Mitchie. It was Michelle's sister Joan had a folk duo, you know, and nobody it's kind of got lost in the mix because they started singing it John and Mitchie, so thinking it was John Phillips and. But
that's what I always thought. I never knew that.
No, see, there's a little piece of trivia.
Well, tell the folks about. Well, as after that, I guess the music career kind of started to fall apart a little bit. Tell the folks about the Day on the Street Corner that you talk about in your biography.
Oh, well,
I think that is an interesting, surreal moment.
This was before Eve. I left the Christey Minstrels, went to California, and I was, I'd been on the road with a hit group. I wrote a hit song. I did 300 shows a year, and I thought I went in to see record producers. Nobody had the time of day for me, man. They were out of town. They were busy. They called me back, and for a couple of weeks, I just went to every producer in Hollywood. Nobody wanted to see me, so I gave up. And one afternoon, I'm going to a movie with my friend Paul Potash. And we're walking down this Hollywood Boulevard and heading for Grauman's Chinese or something like that. And I had like, $3-4 in my pocket, just enough to go to the movie, buy a popcorn and soda, and that was it. I was broke. I mean, here I had 3 years with the Minstrels on there. I'm making, thousands of dollars a year, $100,000 a year, something like that with the Minstrels. And I'm broke. I don't have any more, because you spend it. When you make it, you spend it as fast as you make it. Whatever you make, you spend. And I did, I thought took no thought for tomorrow. I just lived in the moment. And I'm walking down the street thinking, man, nobody wants to see me. I'm a loser. It's all over for me. My career is finished. And right at that time, I'm walking by a record store, and the front door is open, and I hear my voice coming out of the record store. Green, green is green, they say on the far side. Everybody singing, hey, And I said, God, I can't believe it. That's me coming out. And I got $4. And nobody wants it. And right at that moment, a convertible pulls up to the stop sign, and the music radio is on, and it's, now that the ladder of life has been strung, a chimney street starts on the very first rung. And there's my voice coming on the radio from the car radio, and I got 2 songs in stereo, 2 different songs hit me in different ears. And I'm thinking, God, this is like a movie script. And I'm looking around, where are the cameras? Don't kill yourself, Uncle Barry. Your career's not over yet.
Yeah.
And then my friend Paul says, come on, man, the light turned green. And so I went on with him to the movie. But that was just a moment of insanity, serendipitous reality.
How was it that you appeared in the James Coburn film, The President's Analyst? That was
well. I had a friend. He's gone now. What an incredible guy. He was working in the movie, and they were looking for a guy to play this part of Old Wrangler, and they were reading the script, and he said, "Oh, I know this guy. He lives in Topanga Canyon. This is him." So I didn't even. I was already under contract to the studio too, and it was a pay-or-play contract, so they had to use me or pay me anyway. And so they called me in, and I did the movie. It was just incredible. And Coburn was such a neat guy to work with. I mean, it was the first movie I ever did. And I think it was the last movie I ever did, too.
Well, the werewolf thing, if you don't want to mention it.
Oh, Werewolves on Wheels. I forgot about that. Well, that was just a party in the desert. We all went out and got crazy for a few weeks and rode motorcycles around and chased each other around a fire. It wasn't really a movie. Making a movie. I was just, recording a happening, yeah. But... yeah, so Coburn, he would read the lines. Mostly when the star would do their shot, they would do the 2-shot, and then they'd do their close-up shot. And then when the second guy, which was me, would do my work, well, the star would leave, and a script girl would read me the lines, and I would respond to the script girl. But he didn't, man. He stayed there right there with me and coached me and walked me through the part. And God, I really fell in love with the guy. He's a very fine guy to work with, yeah. And Severin Darden, he's the one who got me the part. He's gone. And a lot of the guys in that movie are gone. I may be the only one left. It's that way with a lot of first circles of my friends. I just found last night that Kenny Rankin passed away a year ago. I didn't even know it. And I was with Kenny the night the lights went out in New York City. We spent the whole evening together. It was just incredible. And I met him over in Europe, and he was touring Europe, and we were the Christeys, and we were on a tour bus together, and he and his wife were on the bus, and God, we just became great friends. And then, you fall out of touch with each other, and years go by, you don't see each other, and then you see each other again. It's like no time has passed. You just pick the conversation right up where you left off, and then more years go by, and this time the years went by, and one of them took him out last year, and so he's not. I guess he had heart attack or cancer or something. He smoked a lot. Kenny did.
Mm-hmm. Well,
anyway.
Let's get in another sample of your music. And Dave White picked out the song Dolphins, which you can download from the Barry McGuire website.
Yeah,
and
it
features you and John York. And what's the story behind that song?
Yeah, it's on. Actually, you can go to the Barry McGuire site, but there's a flag there. It's called Trip in the '60s. Click on that flag, and that'll take you to my show site. And then you go to the store on the show site, and you can download it from the store. But the story behind, I was living up at Denny's house, Denny Doherty. I just came back from New York, did hair on Broadway for a year. Giving me down to there, hair, shoulder length and longer. Yeah, it was just once again like going to a party and getting paid for it. And so I came back to California. I'd blown my knee out. I hurt my knee in the show, and it got big like a watermelon. And so I was recuperating at Denny's. I went by just to say hello, and I wound up staying a year and a half. And while I was there, Fred Neal came out from Coconut Grove, Florida.
Oh, the great songwriter, sure.
I never met him before. And Denny said, "Wait till you hear this guy sing, man. He's going to blow you away." So he showed up, and then he stayed up 3 or 4 days and got over the jet lag and called the big limo, and down to the studio we went and went in there. And I went over in the corner, and I was just, kind of sitting there on a stool, and he was in the middle of the room and on a little low stool chair, and he had his 12-string, and he tuned it up, and he started playing and singing, and I'd never heard a voice like his in my life. And he did this song, Dolphins, and I was over there dancing when he did, and he did Tripping Over the Ocean, Skipping Over the Ocean, like a Stone. He did that one that night, and I'd never heard any of those songs, never heard them before. And I just, so when in the Trip in the '60s show, when I chose the songs for the show, I thought, I'm only going to do songs that were written by people I knew and performed with and partied with and hung out with and recorded with, Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of great songs in the '60s that I don't do in the show because I didn't hang out with those people. Mm-hmm. But so I do Fred Neal's tunes and Timmy Hardin's tunes and John Sebastian tunes and John Phillips tunes and Bob Dylan tunes, and I do all these different people's songs, and because I hung out with them and I knew them, Hoyt Axton, and just different people like that. And I wrote Greenback Dollar with Hoyt Axton on a laundromat on Santa Monica Boulevard, waiting for our clothes to come out of the dryer.
And you didn't get any credit for it.
And I didn't get any credit for it because I was out of town when the trio wanted to record it.
That's the Kingston Trio, folks.
Yeah, and so they had to publish it real quick, and so they left my name off of the songwriter. And I ragged on him for years. Now he's dead. And it's incredible. And most of the trio's gone too. So yeah,
but folks who don't know, Hoyt Axton was also the guy that wrote The Pusher and Snowblind Friend for Steppenwolf. Those were his.
Yeah, and he also wrote Joy to the World, All You Boys and Girls. And he wrote that song, and he had one song short of an album. And they said, "Well, write a song, Hoyt." And he's in the studio. They said, "What do you mean write a song?" He said, "Just write a song. I can write here, right now." He said, "Yeah, we need one more song." The guy said, "Just sing anything, and we'll publish it, and that'll be your 12th song. Anything, la la la. We don't care." And so Hoyt sat there, and he said, "I didn't know what to do, Mac." He said, "So first thing came to mind, Jeremiah was a bullfrog." And he wrote the song sitting in the studio right there. And I asked him, I said, "What's this song all about?" He said, "Man, when you write a song in 3 minutes, you don't have a clue what it's about." He said, "All I know," he says, "is that my next-door neighbor lady, her little boy had a pet frog named Jeremiah. And that's the first thing that came into my brain, and that's what came out of my mouth. And the rest of the song just followed, Isn't that an incredible story? Best song he ever wrote.
Well, biggest hit for sure, yeah.
It was. It really was, yeah. But hey, Dolphin, just the message in Dolphin. Listen to the message in this song. And this song was recorded, 45 years ago. Maybe, and the message was right. After the song, I'll tell you, I talked with Peter Tork a lot, and I'll tell you what Peter and I said about the 60s recently on a phone call.
All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here it is with a new version of the song, performed by John York and Barry McGuire, Dolphins. And we'll let Dave edit that in.
Yeah.
And that was Dolphins. Well,
incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. Before we put that in, Barry, you were going to tell us a story, and I forgot what it was.
Oh yeah, well, it's about the message in the song. I mean, I ain't the one to tell us the world how to get along. I only know the peace will come when all the hating's gone. And I Peter Tork and I, we talk usually once or twice a month. He lives in the East Coast.
For those of you who don't remember, Peter Tork was one of the monkeys.
Oh yeah, hey, we're the monkeys. Yeah, but he's just such a sweetheart guy, and our friendship has never waned over the years. And we were talking about the old days, and he said, McGuire, we had the right idea. It was like throw all the rules away and to be free. We were all looking. That's what the '60s were all about, was freedom. Let freedom ring. And he says, and this is a profound statement, man, that came out of the conversation. He says that, Barry, he says, freedom without rules will kill you.
And it did.
Just staggered me, man. Freedom without rules will kill you. And we talked about how, you're free to get in your car. I could get out right now, get my car in the garage, and I could drive back to Boston and go to his house. I'm free. I can drive anywhere in the United States. I can drive through Canada, Alaska, down to Mexico. You're free to drive wherever, as long as you obey the road rules.
Mm-hmm.
If you obey the road code, you can drive anywhere. And there's a road code for life. And if you obey those rules, you're free. Well, we threw all the rules away, and because we did in the 60s, over a 10-year period, I lost 16 of my personal friends, through drug overdose and suicide and sexually transmitted diseases, because we were free with no rules. You got to have rules. My first rule I adopted, right? My little Seat I was talking about earlier in the show, my little Italian roadster.
Yes.
The police impounded it illegally, and while it was in the impound lot, they stripped it. They stole the heads off my Corvette engine, intake manifolds, took the seats out, my Italian steering wheel, all the instruments. They just gutted the car. And so my first rule I adopted back into my life was, maybe we shouldn't steal from each other.
Yeah, I think it's in the Ten Commandments somewhere.
Maybe thou shalt not steal is not such a bad idea, And then the next rule I adopted, we were up at Denny's house, and John Phillips called and he says, "Are you guys okay?" We says, "Yeah, why? Yeah, we're fine." "Oh man, everybody's dead over at Sharon Tate's house, man." And we didn't know what had happened.
The Manson killings.
Yeah, so there was the whole thing on the Manson killings. And so I adopted another rule back into my, maybe we shouldn't kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a good rule.
Yeah.
And then the next rule came along. I the girl that I came out from New York with when I finished here, and I was living with at Denny Doherty's house. Well, we went to see Scott McKenzie.
Oh, yes, yeah. Wanted some flowers in your hair in San Francisco.
Oh, man, and Scott was the best-looking guy in Hollywood, man, and could sing the birds out of the trees. I mean, when Scotty would sing, the birds would all start looking, like self-conscious.
Oh, goodness.
They weren't going to sing anymore after hearing him. So I took my girlfriend over to his house. She took one look at him and said, she said, "I think I want to stay here with Scotty for a couple of days." And I said, "Oh, okay, great. I'll pick you up next week," because we had this open relationship thing. And so I went away, came back next week. She said, "I'm going to stay another week." And I went, "Oh, okay, well, I'll be back next week." So I went away for another week, came back. She said, "We're getting married." I said, wait a minute. I thought we were soulmates. I thought this is our, She says, "Well, aren't we free to do what we want?" I said, "Well, yeah." She says, "Isn't that what, we live by that code?" "Yeah." And she said, "Well, aren't I free to marry Scott if I want to?" And well, yeah, but what about us? So then I adopted another law.
Here comes rule number 3.
Yeah, that we shouldn't rip each other off for our old ladies, And gradually, all of those archaic commandments started to make sense, Don't kill, don't lie, don't steal, don't, commit adultery. I mean, it's just simple little rules, and when you obey the rules, all of a sudden your life, it's like I told the guy one time, I said, I was like a capsized ship, and all of a sudden these things started I had an encounter with Christ, not with Christianity, but with Christ.
There is a difference.
There is a difference, you know. So, tragically, I think most of Christianity has very little to do with Christ himself. You know, it's just
sure, words were never spoken.
You know, but the words, I got a hold of a New Testament at Denny's house. There was a little book there called Good News for Modern Man, and I picked it up and started to read the life and times of Jesus. And when he said, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, I thought, man, this is the answer to the eve of destruction. This is the answer to my own personal destruction. And I wanted to be like him. But then I would look at Christianity, I thought, but I don't want to be like them. Golly. And about a year struggle went by, and finally I said, you know what, I don't care what's going on. I've never heard words more simple that resonated more truth throughout my being than his words. So I set my course to follow into Christ. And as I did, it's like my capsized ship turned right side up, and then the wind caught my sails, and now I've been sailing, man, for 35, 48 years. Just incredible.
Well, to say that's kind of the next phase of your professional career, is you put out some 20 or so. I guess you call it Christian rock music. Is that best term for it?
I did. Well, I've always sung about where I'm at. What's going on in my life, and when that's not going on in my life anymore, then I have to sing whatever else comes along. And so I did, and I got into the whole Christian fundamental, I don't even know what to call it, organism, organization. And because, I thought, well, if Christ was the answer that I was looking for, well, where do I go to hang out with people who hang out with him? Well, I thought, church. So I went to church, and all of a sudden I was just buried alive in all these different doctrines and teachings and rules and regulations and judgment and it just crushed everything that was happening within me, And finally I just had to shake that off and say, wait a minute. Christ is bigger than this little box of rules here, And took the next step. And in fact, I heard recently that somebody said, well, McGuire's gone off the deep end. And I thought, wow, thank God. Yes, I have. It's deep under deep, man. I'm tired of the shallow water. I told another guy one time, I said, I feel like, you know what a plankton is, these little planktons? I said, I feel like a plankton suspended in the sea of God's infinite being, Just a little plankton floating in the sea, and the current takes me where it will, and it's a free ride. Just trusting the sea to provide for me what I need, and it does, and it takes me where I need to go. Just like this conversation we're having now. This is all part of the current carrying us together, and then it'll carry us apart. And you'll go your way, I'll go mine, and it's so simple. It's much, much more simple than religion makes it.
Well, earlier you mentioned that you've got some gigs coming up in L.A. at the end of May. Where else can folks find your music or see you live, or what's happening for you? I don't really keep it all in my head. I have to, in fact, in order for me to know where I'm going, I have to go to my own website and look at the calendar. It's just too much. I did 45 tripping shows last year, and then I did about 15 solo shows, and I can't keep all that in my brain. All over the world, from Switzerland to Australia, and so I know I'm coming. I'm doing some house concerts in Southern Cal. I'm doing a couple of shows at the Coffee Gallery backstage in Altadena, and that's all on my website schedule page. It's a really, really neat website he's got there. There's videos. There's a store where you can pick up a ton of his music. There's his biography, which is just fascinating, and again, we just scratched the surface of it today, but there's lots more stories than we had time to get into. So I certainly invite you to check that out.
Well, that would be great. Thanks, Wes, very much.
Well, I guess the last thing to do is to just simply say thanks, Barry,